You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 357, The High Republic. So after our little sabbatical here of approximately 3 to 4 weeks, we're back to finally talk about The High Republic. And I want to apologize personally because this show was actually supposed to come out last Sunday, and something came up with work, and it just, luckily, Jonesy was flexible, and we were able to kind of defer it to this week. So we're a week behind. Again, apologies there for that little hiccup, but we're excited. I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. This something I've been waiting to do since December when we received our ebooks of this stuff, and I got a chance to dig into it and read it, and I got really excited about it. I've even got my socks on tonight for anybody that's wondering. Maybe you'll see those, probably won't. But speaking of socks, no, I don't know what that means. Jonesy's here tonight. Jonesy's got a new background. I don't know if you noticed, he's not rocking the green screen anymore. He's got like a legit background. So welcome, Jonesy. Welcome back from vacation.
Thanks, man. I finally got my act together and got a few things straightened up. So here we go. And special props just for you tonight. I
see that. Yeah, you've got the holocron was the one that stood out to me. I can see that there.
Yep.
We'll talk about holocrons here in a little bit.
Yeah, and then a special one for one of our featured characters.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That is actually true. We've got, show that. This is the coffee cup. There's something about the coffee cup. Let's just leave it at that. So, hey, before we get started, I don't even have this in the show notes. I don't mean to throw you a curveball. Hopefully, I don't know. Have you had a chance to read up on what was going on with EA games and Star Wars and Lucasfilm games and all that stuff? What were your thoughts around that?
Well, I think it's a new era for we've seen that the Star Wars games now have a bit of a little bit of momentum here. And we've heard this open world RPG type of thing before, and we didn't really get much from it. So I'm cautiously optimistic with some of the announcements we got. I mean, we didn't get anything concrete, of course, but EA still being in the mix, they kind of skirted around that one just a touch and focused in other areas. But I'm not surprised. The last few games have done pretty well. They've been received pretty well. I'm not sure what the actual numbers are, but it seems like we're heading in a good direction. I just don't know what they're going to do with it yet. What all do you take from that?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it feels like we're going, I guess, back to it feels like we're going back to the way things used to be, where it was kind of all managed in-house at Lucasfilm. I think it's exciting. I mean, I don't think EA is going away anytime soon. I mean, they've got, like you said, a number of games that have been received really well. I was looking at the numbers from Galaxy of Heroes. I just did the quick math, and they've pulled in almost $10 million on that game in the last 4.5 years.
For a mobile game. Yeah.
For a mobile game. So that is a huge cash cow. So, I mean, Lucasfilm, I think, is really just kind of wanting to, I mean, if you think about it, they've got all these IPs coming out, right?
Right.
Whether it's, High Republic, whether it's all these TV shows, they're going to want to capitalize on all of this. And so to put that much of a burden on one publishing company, even as big as EA is, right?
Sure.
It seems like that's probably a little too much. And so I think what they're doing here is just kind of testing the waters out, spreading the wealth, if you will, allowing more people to they're going to need that infrastructure of just developers and stuff to crank out games, whether it be mobile or on PC or the consoles, all that stuff. So, I think it all makes complete sense. And, we're the ones that are going to benefit from this, right? The number of games that we can probably expect here over the next 3 to 5 years is going to be probably as intimidating and overwhelming as some of the other TV shows and everything that we're going to talk about here tonight. So I'm excited.
Each studio does something better a little bit differently, or each does something differently a little bit better, right, than the other. So they all bring something unique. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind is we want this variety because each one of these has, unique storytelling or unique action or unique RPG components. So like you said, we're all a winner in this as long as they can deliver the goods and actually give us a really good, I think we're looking for a story now. Squadrons was kind of fun, combat wise, and Fallen Order was a good story, but I think now we've got a little bit with the Adversio that we had in the Battlefront. So now let's deliver kind of a really complete and a story that everybody can get behind and really knock the socks off of us here and see if they can pull one together.
Yeah, I like the way you use socks there, considering that we've already been talking about the High Republic socks.
I like how you catch all these things.
I hope you're intending them. I don't know if that's true or not, but all right.
Hey, I know how to loft softballs up to you, my friend.
Yeah, you do. Out of the park. Gone. let's get into this, because we've got so what I wanted to do with the show was really just kind of talk about the High Republic at a very high level. I'm going to say that there will be some very minor spoilers, and by minor I mean not like, I'm not going to divulge any like huge plot changing, going to change the way you think about the High Republic. These are minor things that I felt going into this show. Had I not known anything about the High Republic, I would have liked to have known this, because it's technically not a spoiler, and it would have answered some of the questions without me having to pick up the books. And I think that's kind of that was probably what their intent was, right? To kind of just give you enough to really entice you to go pick them up. But at the same time, I know there's some people that are still, they pump the brakes on this. It can feel a little bit overwhelming in terms of number of books and characters and how it all interconnects and that sort of thing. So hopefully that if we do our job here tonight, at least shed some light there and make things a little bit easier for someone either to make a decision about whether or not this is something they want to pursue, or at a minimum, or hopefully better, they jump into it and say, okay, let me just try one of these things based on what you find appealing. So let me share my screen here. We have a visual for this. So for anybody listening to the audio podcast, we're going to do our best to convey a very detailed and visual picture for you. And I say that with sarcasm, because we probably won't. We'll probably forget all about it. So, all right. So
as well as we described your socks, I think.
Right. I'll do a better job of describing the socks than I will anything else in the show tonight. So let's talk first about this. So everybody, if you don't know already, this was Project Luminous, and Project Luminous was something that was touted. What was it, like in 2018?
2019, I believe didn't they announce this at Star Wars Celebration?
Yeah, but there was rumblings prior to that, right? They kept teasing.
Yeah, like in the summer. Yeah, summer of 2018, I think there was something going on, and they formally did it at the Writers' Roundtable, I believe.
Yeah.
And then we got a name. I think we got High Republic in February of 2020.
Right. It wasn't until, exactly.
Spaced out.
Yeah, about a year. Yeah, actually, right, almost to a year to the date. So this was so Project Luminous. There was a lot of speculation as to what it was. I think we speculated at one point on one of the shows in terms of what we thought it was. I don't think we got this right. But I will say that I was pretty happy with this, and here's why. One of the more positive things that I've said about this, and going into the series and kind of really hoping for, praying for, was the fact that if they had 2 years to plan for this, and we saw if you've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff, we know that they had that very big summit, that first one where they brought everybody together, threw up a whiteboard, put a bunch of stuff on there to see what stuck, what didn't. All of that to me resonated, because I mean, you and I are, professionals, and we go into these meetings and we have project meetings, and it's nice to see that there's planning going on to this degree.
Right.
And I think one of the fair criticisms, at least in my opinion, that I've had, and we've all had really, of the sequel trilogies, is it just didn't feel like there was that level of collaboration.
Cohesion.
Now. Yeah, cohesion. And there's a reason for that. We're not going to get into that. There's plenty of shows already that have done that. So that said, going into this project, really felt like, okay, even if this thing doesn't do well, the fact that they've put the forethought into planning to this extent should at least give us something that you can make a really concrete decision on whether you like it or not, based on the content itself, and not whether or not all the homework had been done, right?
Right.
So that's one of the huge positives. And what you see here in front of you, so we've got a picture of the very first picture, I think, that was taken. So you've got all of these amazing authors. You've got Claudia Gray, Justina Ireland, Daniel Jose Older, Kevin Scott, and Charles Soule. And we are, I think you and I are both, with the exception of Justina Ireland, which I've not read anything from her. Daniel Jose Older, we've read Solo, Last Shot, so it was pretty good, not bad. I know we didn't talk about it, but all of the other authors here, I mean, you and I have been pretty big fans of, right? I mean, Claudia Gray, go on, you can chime in on her, but I think everyone else.
Pretty much every book she's written has been amazing.
Yeah.
And Charles Soule with the comics, I mean, this is one I was actually very curious about how this was going to translate, was how Charles Soule was going to take what he writes in a comic, which is a very different medium, and bring it into the novel with Light of the Jedi. And we're going to get more into detail as we get into High Republic here in the next several weeks, and then Light of the Republic. But that was the one I was most uncertain about, how that translation would go. How's that writing style change and adapt to a completely different medium?
Yeah. And not to steal anything here, because we're going to eventually break down the Light of Jedi. But that was a great book. Like his writing style is perfect. Like
it works. Yeah.
It works. Yeah. And so more on that in just a little bit here. So in addition to all of these folks here, they brought in the story group as well. They were part of that whole roundtable and part of the story building itself. And then they spread this out across a couple of different publishers. So you've got Disney Books, which is kind of doing most of the young adult and some of the really smaller books. Del Rey, which is the primary flagship company that's pushing out all the main novels, right? And there's only one of them right now, with a second one coming here next month. In about 5 months. And then you've got IDW Publishing. So they've been known to do comic books. That's pretty much what they've done, graphic novels. And then, of course, Marvel.
Well, and IDW typically has done a little bit younger reading as well.
Yeah.
A different style than Marvel on the comic side, yeah.
Right. They've had the Star Wars Adventures series of comics. So aimed at younger kids. And that's kind of where this falls in line, too, with what they're doing. But there's still, content there if it's something that you're interested in looking at.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it, but actually, one of the IDW comics is probably one of the things I'm most interested in to see what they do with it, and we'll talk about it here in a bit.
So with every Star Wars, there's always a crawl, and sometimes I dread the crawls because it feels like we've seen so many variations of crawls, whether they're in novels, whether they're in video games. Like every video game seems like they have to put a crawl in. So thank you, Rogue One.
Everybody else.
Yeah, Solo, Rogue One. Thank you guys for not including one. There's so I did want to just quickly read through this one. I think it does a pretty good job of kind of setting the stage. It is not the certainly not the end all for even the first phase of this or what we'll see this year, but it certainly sets the tone. So it says the galaxy is at peace, ruled by the glorious Republic and protected by the noble and wise Jedi Knights. All this seems very, casual, right? Things that we're used to. As a symbol of all that luck, the Republic is about to launch Starlight Beacon into the far reaches of the Outer Rim. The new space station will serve as a ray of hope for all to see. But just as a big, magnificent renaissance spreads through the Republic, so does a frightening new adversary. Now the Guardians of Peace and Justice must face a threat to themselves, the galaxy, and the Force itself. So this is what we got with the launch. And I think, it gives you everything you need to at least kind of have a understanding of what's about to happen or where it's going, without really giving you a whole lot of details that come in the way of all of these publications, right?
Right.
So before we get into the books and all that, I thought we could maybe talk about what the High Republic is not, right? We know what we're gonna through the course of this conversation, we'll get through what exactly it is, but I want to talk about what it's not. And I think first and foremost, it's not a retelling of the old Republic. A year ago, what's that? Very different.
Yep.
Yeah, very different. I mean, a year ago we were talking about this and wondering, how far back are they going to go before we had any details? Are they retelling all of the legend stuff? And as far as what seems to be talked about today, nothing official, it does feel like all that's still there, although albeit it's legends, right? But it still seems intact, right? It still jives in terms of a timeline. There are some things that I have found that they have borrowed or were maybe influenced by the old Republic, but they're not game changers, right? They're very inconsequential to the old Republic stories and everything. So so if you're worried about anything changing there, or like, oh, I've got to wrap my head around this now because it's completely different, that's really not the case yet. I'm not saying they won't do that. They've not said that they would, but I haven't seen anything yet. So that's good, right? So if you're a fan of the old Republic like myself, so far so good. Everything's pretty kosher there. And the other interesting part of it is not a story, again, right now, of Jedi versus Sith, right? There's no Mandalorian wars. There's no Mandalorians involved in this. I mean, they mention them actually, believe it or not. They mention the Mandalorians, but
right.
They're not. This isn't, and so that alone feels like it's a far cry from quote Star Wars. And you think about all the elements, Jonesy, that go into a Star Wars story. Jedi versus Sith seem to always be there. But then there's also there's a lot of other things, right? Like the spaceship battles and creatures and
everyday people rising up too, and great bad guys. Something that a bad guy you can really get behind and hate. That they're really true to any kind of storytelling, but for some reason they just feel extra special whenever you mingle this with Jedi and the Force. And this is a very interesting timeline because we're seeing that some things are relatively new to the galaxy and to the Jedi in this phase where, again, I can see where some people get some confusion about how Old Republic really fits with this because, the timing of some of this stuff just seems it's a little hard to get your arms around. And again, we're flexing things a bit. We're not redoing or rehashing or course correcting anything, but But yeah, if you get all these storytelling elements that are just core to Star Wars, and you're getting them here without that traditional Jedi and Sith, and that's what made the crawl so interesting, right? Is the thing that the Jedi fear is the whole premise, which has everything to do with the Force, and where they're going to take that is what we're really dying to see of how this really plays out.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll say, as even you're starting to you kind of get the beginning. I don't want to jump ahead here, but even after the first 3 books have been out, the comic, I think I'm up to speed on everything that's been released and soon to be released. And I still don't really know exactly. I can feel it's moving in that direction. And by the end of Light of the Jedi, you kind of get a sense of kind of where it may go. But even now, it's still there's still a lot to be told here, which is exciting because I didn't want them, to kind of pull back the curtain. We see everything immediately up front. So
it really is. It really has been a bit of a slow. It can't be a slow burn yet, right? Kind of a slow ignition, a bit.
Yeah.
But still engaging and interesting. So that's a really encouraging start when you don't get bored, when you still are not quite sure what the actual threat and what the actual conflict is going to look like.
Right. So one of the things I did want to talk about too is, I don't know if I'm ready here. So this is the timeline, the updated timeline, if you can see that there. They've just redone this. There's a great Twitter post by somebody at Del Rey. I forget the gentleman's name now. He's like one of the publishers or editors or something. And he posted this timeline on Twitter of the timeline, like exactly what went into developing the canon timeline and all the decisions to add things, remove things, make things bold, underscore things. It's really fascinating if you're into that kind of thing. I read the whole thing. There's like, I don't even know, 30 tweets that are all kind of linked together on this. But that said, this is the updated timeline and kind of what they've broken it into. So the High Republic, as you can see, falls obviously just before the fall of the Jedi, which is a new name for us, a new term, I think, that we're not used to hearing or seeing.
Makes sense.
You've got the reign of the Empire after that. This is the Bad Batch and Solo Star Wars story. Then we get into Age of Rebellion, which aligns with the comic book series, right? We were reading those, called the same thing. From there, we get into the New Republic, and that stack right there is about to get really long. Right. Once you add in all these shows that are coming out that Filoni and Favreau are pumping out. So that should be pretty exciting. And then you've got Rise of the First Order, which has everything from Resistance and Rise of Skywalker, Force Awakens, the whole sequel trilogy. So, and then in terms of where the High Republic falls, so officially, the High Republic starts about 300 years before the Battle of Yavin, right? So 300 years. We land with Light of the Jedi at year 232, which I thought was pretty smart, because if you think about it, it gives them a little bit of cushion if they want to go back and do pre-stories, right? Prequels, right, if you will, to the High Republic. So they've got a little space there. I mean, that's a pretty big span of about, 68 years to kind of play with in there?
Yeah.
Which is good. So we're coming in at 232. It still gives us a lot of time, hundreds of years, or 100 plus years at least, to tell the stories within the High Republic. And if you're wondering how are they going to fill that up, we'll get to that at the very end of the show, because there was something they did announce here just recently. But what are your thoughts, I guess, on the timeline itself? Are you pretty happy? It looks pretty clean right now. Right. My guess is my gut tells me it's going to get really complicated, or there's going to be a lot more here, and it's going to be very busy very soon.
Yeah, I think if you're bringing new people in, it's something like this is really important to publish, right? So you can see the eras that you can explore, and then you can blow these up as you zoom into them and see what you're going to do, and you can kind of pick, once you get into one, you can kind of pick what seems more interesting to you as you go through it. And I'm digging the names though, because I think they're very descriptive, and they're very important to capture the essence of what each of those eras represents. And it's interesting that the High Republic is at the very start of it though, rather than anything like Old Republic or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit of an interesting one there, but I think it's a great representation of what we have. And you're right. This would be great as an interactive timeline, actually, where you can actually click into something, or you scroll your mouse into it and blow it up, and then see all of the content that makes it up and completely blow your mind apart.
Yeah,
would be fantastic, because like you said, there's so much content across all of this, and just with High Republic alone, gosh, this thing's going to be just insanely full and really rich with content.
Yep. And okay, so one last thing on the timeline before we get into the books and novels. If you're familiar with the Old Republic, there was something that happened called the Russon Reformation, and the Russon Reformation happened about 1,000 years. And this was, I won't get into the history because it was originally not in Old Republic stuff, and then the prequel trilogy came out and they had to change something because of what Palpatine said. But essentially, at 1000 BBY is when the Sith were, quote, driven out. And we all, in my head, in your head, I'm sure, and a lot of people said, they were never really driven out. They were never driven to extinct. They just chose to go hide and lay low for a little bit, right? But if you think about it from that perspective, so we've almost gone at this point 700 plus years without any Sith. And this is what it's allowed the Jedi to really flourish, and it's why we were in this era of the High Republic, because it really had no, I mean, they've had contention, but it's all been, skirmishes and just your average day, squabbles between different planets and stuff. Nothing on a galactic scale, nothing on the scale of, the 100-year wars with the Mandalorians, and nothing on the scale of the Jedi and Sith wars. It just raged on for thousands and thousands of years, and just made everybody sick of both Jedi and Sith. I mean, they were just getting sucked into this, and we saw that. You see that history repeat itself once we get into the Clone Wars, right, where everyday citizens are just getting pulled into these battles against their will. So 700 years has passed, no Sith, and if you think about it, in this span of about 232 years, or less than that actually, we're going to see what happens to the High Republic, which is the one thing I'm most excited about. The fact that we get to see them in their at their highest point, and knowing that Palpatine is coming, right? The dark side is going to surface once again, and it's going to surface like it's never, arguably, well, that's not true if you go back. Well, I won't get into that, but it's been a long time since the Sith have risen to this level of power. But to me, that's a really intriguing thing, being able to kind of see the rise. I mean, we're not seeing the rise, we're already in the rise, but seeing the fall, and then what leads us into the fall of the Jedi based on this timeline.
Right, because it seems like it's almost like a crashing, like a complete crash and burn.
Right.
That over the course of 250 years, that everything could go just completely fall apart. And like you were saying before, with the with a little bit of flexibility in the timeline of 5 or 6 decades before where we're at right now in the books, and all this time afterwards, you have a lot of flexibility to move around and piece things together, and you can actually explore. And this is where something like the Acolyte is really cool and interesting, is that you could start to get these little tidbits of information coming out about what is going on a bit behind the scenes. And we'll talk more about that as these things get a little more traction. But I love the space that we have in here, because we're so used to being so confined within, really like 3 to 5 years at a time of space, except for between trilogies. But beyond that, we're so restricted on what we can do. So when we do tell those stories and flush them out and really broaden them, it feels like we run the risk, and sometimes we do, of stepping on toes of other writers and other things that we know to be canon, and maybe headcanon in some case, but things that we know to be true and believe to be true. And this is great, because not only is it brand new, but we can really give everyone some room to grow and room to really stretch.
Yep, absolutely. Let me. What is happening there? There we go. Okay. Sorry, that was my OCD was bothering me there. Was kicking in. All right, okay. Let's talk about the books. All right, so we're going to start by what I'd like to do in this segment, or for the rest of the show, is again talk about the books. Again, they're not We're not doing reviews. We are not breaking down the books by any means. I thought it'd be good just to kind of talk about the synopsis at a high level, what you would find maybe on the Del Rey website or on StarWars.com. Talk about the characters that you can expect to see. And we're not going to get into all the characters, and more on that in just a second, but at least some of the characters that I feel like, as you're reading the book, pay attention to these names, okay? Because especially let's just get into it. With Light of the Jedi, I really, really enjoyed this book. And that's not because I got a free book. It's not because, I'm blind or anything. It just was really well written, first off. And we said that, right? Charles Soule did a great job. And I think you and I were both banking on it because we were such fans of his comic book writing. I was really interested to see how this would translate for him. And he did a really great job. Like, he doesn't give you a lot of fluff. There's not his writing style is very quick to read.
The pacing's phenomenal. Yeah. The
pacing's phenomenal. I mean, you can just pick this thing up, and next thing you know, you've read through 3 chapters. I mean, just like that. Right. It's very fast. The only feedback, and I've said this before, I think I said this, I may have posted this, I know I said it on Discord and probably one of the previous shows that we did before we took the break here. The only problem I had with it really was just the fact that there were a lot of characters being thrown at you. And I had a notepad, and I was sitting here having to take notes. And when I got to the end of the book and I looked at my notes, I realized that, while Pupil's notes were awesome, I really did. I wrote a lot of people's names down that I didn't have to because I didn't know which, right? So I thought, well, let's just focus on the characters as we talk about today that I think you need to pay attention to. And hopefully that'll help you kind of just filter out some of this stuff because you really do get bombarded with it.
This is your Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, this is the Cliff Notes version.
Who didn't know?
Okay, so do you have that, the When a Shocking Catastrophe in Hyperspace? Do you want to read that? Just that one piece there?
Oh, wow. You're going to make me dig stuff up now, aren't you?
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
But you blew it up to like, oh man, like size.
I did.
Here.
I did.
Like stretch it against my, no, you're going to have to read it because it goes across my entire screen.
All right. So here's, it's an inside joke. We'll explain someday. All right. So it says, when a shocking catastrophe in hyperspace tears a ship to pieces, the flurry of shrapnel emerging from the disaster threatens an entire system. No sooner does the call for help go out than the Jedi race to the scene. The scope of the emergence, however, is enough to push Jedi to their limit. As the sky breaks open and destruction rains down upon the peaceful alliance they helped to build, the Jedi must trust in the Force to see them through a day in which a single mistake could cost billions of lives. So the premise here is you've got this ship, it explodes, it sends pieces of shrapnel all over this galaxy, and they're basically meteors or missiles at this point. And the Jedi are called in to kind of help rescue everybody. That's kind of what's happening, right? Again, that's the premise of this thing. There's really no spoilers in that. It's you get in. The cool thing about this, as I said, the cool thing about this book is, well, okay, some people have had a problem with it, and I can see where they have an issue. It's very different. I can't think of another Star Wars book where they threw you in the middle. They kind of gave you a countdown, basically. And there's been other books that have done this, but Star Wars books, I can't think of one. But they throw you right into the middle, and they start counting down to this big, great event, which finally culminates like halfway through the novel-ish, somewhere about halfway through, you finally get to see what happens. And where it kind of takes a step to the side of what we're used to seeing is you don't get like the traditional, very slow burn introduction of characters. They throw these characters right at you, and you have to, it's like sink or swim. You've got to take in what's going on. You've got to remember the names, and everything's just happening so fast paced. But I think he was doing that intentionally. Whether it works or not, it worked for me. It may not work for some folks, but it did feel like we were at least, you were almost kind of forced to kind of pick up on some of the names and really understand what's going on, which made you pay attention very quickly. That coupled with his writing style, I think it worked well for me. But so what just kind of initial thoughts on that book real quick? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, getting into it, I can understand where people get a little turned off at the beginning because it's really difficult to understand what is actually happening and what is this setting up. Like you said, there's a lot of names to where, and not everybody survives, which is great. But at the same time, it's which names are important, and it's really difficult to continue to grasp onto these and just keep track of them all. It almost jumps into where it's almost expecting you to know a little bit of something. But it backtracks enough, or not backtracks, but it gets the characters all reintroduced a little bit later to where you can really start to learn them and you get more comfortable with them. But this emergence event was really interesting because it's just, we've never seen anything like this before. And the characters in the book, like, this isn't possible. So it's really cool that we get something unique right out of the gate with something that can happen at light speed and what happens when you collide in light speed, right? And so it's really a really neat premise that we can explore. And yeah, I liked it. I mean, Soule's writing really works pretty well. It's a bit more casual than I think we've seen some of the other, maybe more seasoned novel writers, whatever they're called, or writers. So I think it's a little bit different, but I think that's also a great way to segue into it because you have this really nice bridge between a comic writer and a soon to be more accomplished novelist. And I think it's a really good way of doing it. And I think that the story they've got here works pretty well. And we've got the conflict that we're getting already is something where you actually feel like, okay, this seems to be a bit of a valid threat. And I think that's always important that for Star Wars is that there has to be something that the Jedi can't just completely overwhelm just because of who they are and having some of this conflict, but you also get to see them in their prime. And I think they really do a great job of reestablishing the Jedi as not only a force, but a really self-aware and self-conscious group of a body of, or really body, the whole order. Yeah. And they really are a bit more altruistic than we've seen in the Republic days. And I think all these things are really important, though. We kind of get our Jedi back, so to speak. And I think that's what the High Republic era is really going to do for us. We're going to see things where people struggle with this and that. And there's a couple characters I like because we see that a little of that already. But I'm really interested to see how they start to really play on the differences between the characters as we kind of walk through a few of these. We'll point some of those out.
Yeah. And here's one last thing before we get into the characters. I guess on this book, another thing that feels different about it is, I will say that there's feedback that's been out there, and I think it's fair that as you're reading this book, even when you get to the very end, and you've got a good handle on who's who and that sort of thing, they really don't get into the characters very deeply. There's a couple that stand out. There's a couple great moments by characters. Some great characters have some great moments. And I've seen a lot of feedback of, well, I didn't really care for the characters that much, and they kind of all bled together. And that's fair. I totally get it. The approach here is different, right? You think about it. They've got literally a 3-year plan. And they've got a number of books that have coming out. And as we go through this, you're going to see how these characters are kind of just jumping in and out of books and all across it. I mean, it's a very intricate web, if you will, of storytelling that they're doing. And I think what they're doing here, and whether it's successful or not, I don't know. But I think what they're doing here is they are allowing these additional stories and novels to fill in the blanks to allow you to really like these characters. So think about this almost like a TV show, right? You see the first pilot episode. You kind of get some quirky stuff about people, but you don't know these characters. And you know that over the course of this season, over the next, hopefully over the next 6 episodes, 12 episodes, definitely by the end of the season, the first 24 episodes, I'm going to know a lot about these characters, and I'm going to I'll probably be vested in some of them because I really connected with them in certain ways. And some characters I'm not going to like. And that's kind of the approach here. You get to the end of the novel, and again, with the exception of the main characters and even them, you don't get a lot of detail, but it does make you wonder a lot about them and what more there is to them. You realize there's layers to them. And for me, that's exciting because I want to know more, and I'm hooked and I want to read all of these, and I'm looking forward to getting the full story and these characters kind of fleshing out and going and seeing them go through, like you said, the highs and the lows and struggling and eventually all kind of leading up to, the fall of the Jedi, if you will, right? The beginning of the end, if you will, with especially with when we get to like the Phantom Menace. So right. Did that rub you the wrong way? Did you feel like you left this book without, and I didn't want to turn this into a review of Light of Jedi because we're going to probably regurgitate a lot of the stuff when we break the book down, but right. Did you feel the same way as you got to the very end of the novel?
Yeah, it kind of felt like we're always waiting for that ultimate climax to really happen, and it just never quite gets to that high that you're expecting. But again, I think if you take a step back and you look at this as a broader work, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I liked about this, and we can talk about how, and we will, in another show, but, how the Jedi all kind of blend together a bit and work off one another. But I think that's fantastic, actually, because what I like about this era is that the Jedi really do work well together. There's not as much ego between them. And there's a little bit of competitiveness, and there's definitely some drive and some push with some of these characters, especially with their Padawans. But what I really like that they just work well together. It really does feel like an order, and they really do, seem to want to make the galaxy better. They're willing to get involved. Whereas so often in the fall of the Republic era, we had the Jedi just unable to get involved or unwilling to, or, we saw this a lot in Clone Wars, especially, right? We just, they decided to be neutral. Therefore, we're not getting involved. We're not touching it. And they're very much the Jedi are part of the Republic. They are integrated into the Republic, which is if you're a fan of EU, hearing that and reading this, and then going back to how the EU was after Return of the Jedi and how they always struggled with being in and out of the Republic. It's such a fun comparison and seeing how we used to interpret things and now how we're going to interpret this way. And so I think it's a fun exercise to look at those, and you could still bring in your EU hat if you want to. And I know we bring that up a lot, not for argument's sake, but just for fun comparisons. I think it's something really for the people who have EU knowledge. They'll enjoy just the mental exercise of looking at that.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about the characters, and we're going to start with Avar Kriss. And man, there's a lot to be said about her. I'll give you some quick facts, and then I want your take on her. So she's born around 262 BBY. I would say she's probably. I'm going to say it's hard to say. Again, there's not really a main character in Light of the Jedi, but certainly she is the focus. She's a primary focus. I mean, she's on the front of the cover, obviously. Right. She grew up with Stellan and Elzar, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. She's actually really close with Elzar Mann, which again you'll hear a little bit. Right. I had her as as wise, powerful, hopeful, very compassionate. She's like the model Jedi, like
She really is.
like pure in every way. I mean, she's just very selfless in every way, but not pretentious about it, right? I mean, she's very she seems grounded and just very sincere about everything. She's like the perfect Jedi. The model Jedi of what you would think somebody of I'm going to use Dungeons and Dragons terminology here, but like lawful good alignment without the dogmatism so much, without being pretentious in any way. That's kind of what she is. I mean, she was my favorite character coming out of it. It's a close tie between her and somebody else, but your thoughts on her and what you thought of her as you were reading it, and certainly what, you can wax some of her abilities and what you saw if you want. Well, no, don't spoil it.
We got to be careful with that. But I really liked her as well. And what was funny, you could see our cynicism creep in, because we were reading through Light of the Jedi, and again, she's a pretty prominent character in the book. You just keep waiting for her to have that negative aspect come back to her. They're like, oh yeah, you're a great character, but then there's that. That's going to be a thing. And you just really, there's only one little thing we get with her that I recall at least. But with her, she just seems so pure, right? Yeah. And just, again, giving and just open to whatever's in front of her, and just willing to give and willing to touch. And I think one of her cool abilities, I'm hesitating a little bit to say too much about it, but her ability to bring other Jedi together, and she sees the Force as this song. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great way to exemplify the Force, and just how this thing really does. We keep talking about how it binds the galaxy and connects everything. But the way that they it's they don't do a lot of in-depth on it, don't get me wrong, but the way that they describe it and the way that she exemplifies this really does really epitomize how we probably should view the Force, or how a lot of us would if we were able to do it as gracefully as Charles Soule has done here. And I think that's really an important thing, that we understand how Jedi interpret the Force and how they perceive it and how they feel it and how they experience it. And those are things that I think for folks like you and me and a lot of our listeners, it's just so much fun to understand what it actually means to be a Jedi and have all of this, power, but also just all of this basically opening yourself up and hearing the galaxy. Right. It's kind of an incredible feeling to be able to see that on the page and get just a glimpse of what that might mean. And Avar Kriss, she's such a perfect character to that, because again, the ego's not there, like you were saying. She seems very wise. She seems very well respected. Mm-hmm. And I mean, clearly she's escalating through the chain. And it's nice that she has some history with some of our characters, because I think, again, we were talking about timeline wise, we can kind of go back and forth a bit with what we want to learn about her and what little things are important to pick up as we go through the stories, but then go back and pick up along the way.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add is, as a model Jedi, there are actually other characters, other Jedi that we'll be talking about that actually look up to her. Like she is. Oh,
she's a hero. Yeah, she's a hero.
Yeah, she's something that they're all aspiring to be. And so that she sets the bar really high in that regard. And you touched on this, and we haven't got all of the answers just yet, so we won't say anything more. But this whole project is introduced. Jonesy mentioned it earlier. They're introducing this aspect of every Jedi interprets the Force in a very unique way. They see it differently. It all works the same, but how they interpret it and how they see it is kind of different. And we get to see it a lot through her eyes. And I'm really hoping we get to see the other variations for all the other Jedi as well, which and we haven't yet. So I don't want to again, but that's pretty exciting. It's a different aspect, or it's different than I think what we're used to seeing.
Right.
The other fun thing I thought I'd throw in here is just kind of mention the type of lightsaber they had, because there's a wide variations, a lot of variations of lightsabers for the Jedi here. You don't see it in this picture because that's the concept art there on the left, but she does wield a green cross-hilt lightsaber, and I don't think I got a picture of it. I don't. Even in the on the cover of Light of the Jedi, you don't see it. Looks like she's got a standard lightsaber, but she does have a cross-hilt. So there's in the comic book you can see it. I should have grabbed the picture from that, but so it's kind of cool. And then the last thing is, if you read The Rise of Kylo Ren and you got to issue 3, there was a moment there where Kylo Ren was working with, was it Hennix? I forget his name. One of the Jedi he was really close with. They were trying to open up the holocron, and when it did open up, this, former Jedi, ancient Jedi showed up and said, "Hello, searcher," and she was going to basically walk him through. It was kind of a lesson that was being taught. This was confirmed by Charles Soule that this was indeed Avar Chris, that was in that comic book. And then that was, again, obviously was like almost a year ago. So it's been a while. So nice little Easter egg that was in there before this book came out. So that's her there.
And I can see so the lightsabers are a bit of a sticking point for some people, I believe. And because of the cross hilt in particular, because these are physical cross hilts.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels, this is this line with the old Republic of, well, how ancient is ancient? How new modern is modern? And where does this fall? Because this doesn't feel far enough back from, our original or pre-trilogy days, where it seems like some of these, King Arthur type of styles would be prevalent. Also, what does a metal cross hilt actually do for you, except maybe keep your hand from scooching up, unless they're made from Beskar, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to be made from, right, no, you're right. They'd have to be made from a metal, and there's more, I mean, so we'll talk about Stellans here in just a little bit. That's a little bit more practical, but like when we get to like Skier, he's got like a protector right over his hand, and unless that's made of something, it's just for looks. It's not going to stop a lightsaber coming down on it. So, yeah, that's a good point. Hopefully they explain it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't explain that in Star Wars here for us.
Something else we see, and you can see it actually in this picture right here, the Jedi have holsters in this era.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And I like that there's something unique about the era with the style of clothes. And clearly we can see it a bit in some of the artwork on the book and some of the concept art where it does feel a bit more regal. I mean, we do feel like we are in a really prosperous era of sorts. But the holster is a really interesting idea though, because we view that as more of a gunslinger type of thing. Mm-hmm. So why would what practical sense does that make for a Jedi? But I could see where, I don't know, maybe they hadn't invented the D-ring yet or the belt clip or something.
Right.
So it's fun that they have something unique and different to them with still a familiar style.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it was they were trying to come up with a scabbard of some way, right? And you can't sheathe the lightsaber, but maybe you can hang it on something fancy like a holster. And I did crop the picture out, the picture of the lightsaber that you see there. I cropped it, but if you go look for that picture online, you can see what Jonesy's talking about, where it even shows you how it's inserted into the holster there, which is kind of cool. Okay, let's talk about Elzar Mann. He's a pretty important character. And unfortunately, there's not a lot. I couldn't find any pictures. Like, this is the only picture there is of him. This was confirmed to be him by Charles Soule, so we're good there. He's one of the more intriguing and interesting characters because and I won't get into details, but he's got a very unorthodox way of how he goes about using the Force. He doesn't use it like other people. Because of that, there's some distrust among the other Jedi. I'm not saying he's all dark side. Don't get there. Well, not yet. I hope not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he does kind of experiment with it from time to time. And there's a lot of people like Avar herself who loves that aspect of him, that he's willing to put himself out there and try to use the Force in very unique ways and really push the boundaries and that sort of thing. So we don't get a lot of that in Light of the Jedi, but this is a character that as this goes on, I'm hoping that we're going to see more because they did plant a lot of those seeds for him. And then the other, like I mentioned, the three of these guys here. So Stella and Geos, Elzar Mann, and Avar Chris, they all grew up in the Jedi together, the temple. They were all Padawans, so they've known each other for years, and they're like the closest of friends, right? Thick as thieves, if you will. But there's something going on between Avar and Elzar. Like, they're really, truly like best friends, and they confide in each other in a lot of different ways. So it's going to be interesting to see where his character goes at this point. But what were your thoughts, I guess? Anything else you want to add here on Elzar Mann?
Yeah, the thing I liked about it, and I think Avar Chris summarizes this a bit, and you were touching on it, his experimentation with the Force is one of like knowledge gathering. He just wants to see what's possible, and not for personal gain or anything like that, but it's really curious because the way that she frames it is more of this, sometimes he succeeds, sometimes he fails. And she admires the failure because he does something with it. He does something with the failure. And we have all the Last Jedi references now, right? Of what to do with failure. And so it's a really unique, it's a positive spin on it, but you could see the threat that it poses to other people. And you could see a little bit, I mean, could that be jealousy, or could it be fear, or there's a wide variety of things you could do when you feel you have a loose cannon amidst, your ranks. But really he's doing it for really most of the right reasons. At least that's the impression that we're given. But I really like Avar Chris's perspective on it, that she admires his failures more than what he's actually able to accomplish. And he's not afraid to fail, and it's okay to fail. Mm-hmm. And I think those are really positive aspects to push and show, and not symbolize as something negative and something that we should not strive for. I think even in our personal lives, it's always important to take risks from time to time.
Yeah.
And go from there. So I think it's really cool that we do get that aspect of things.
Yep. Stella and Geos, he's in the book. He certainly has lines. He's got moments, but he's not featured in the book strongly. And the reason why is because you're going to see him in a lot of other books coming down the road. So really the only thing I can say, to be fair, is just that we see them. He's kind of like a natural leader. He's a really good teacher. And like I said, he's good friends with Avar, Chris, and Elzar Man. But beyond that, nothing really stands out. So take note of him as you're reading along and just know that he's going to be a pivotal character in some of the upcoming publications as well.
Right. And why that's important is because he's also kind of listed as the voice of reason amidst them, but he has a Padawan that's a prodigy. And so it's really interesting when you have this the prodigal son, or in this case, the prodigal daughter afterwards. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How does that happen? And what does her journey look like, and how does her master play into that? I think that's a really interesting dynamic that we'll get more of as we get into some of the other media.
All right. So these guys were like standouts for me. Loden Greatstorm and Bell Zettifar. Mm-hmm. They're great. Again, I don't want to do spoilers on here because we'll break them down when we get to Light of the Jedi. But I mean, Loden Greatstorm, he's funny. He's got like dry humor. He seems very positive all the time. He's very funny. He's like very pragmatic. He's known to be a very good leader. He's a very good person, a very inspirational person. And this is his Padawan here. So I should have mentioned that, but Bell is his Padawan. And so we get to see a lot of the stuff that's happening in Light of the Jedi through their eyes, both individually and together as Padawan and Master. We get one scene where they are kind of doing some training, so you get to kind of see what that looks like as well. And then for Bell, he's just a likable character. Like, he reminds me of somebody like a Finn, where he's just kind of like a everyday kind of person. I mean, he's obviously a Jedi, but just somebody that's very grounded, very relatable in a lot of ways. He's very humble. He doesn't really believe in himself as much as maybe other people do, that sort of thing. So he's got a lot of self-doubt about just how good of a Jedi he is and whether he's ready to, do the trials and all this stuff. So we get a lot of that in the Light of Jedi, which is great because Bell is, you'll see him, he's featured in a lot of the other novels and books as well. So, and then quickly, the Charhound that you see in the back there is named Ember. And I don't want to spoil anything because that was a really cool moment. So, actually pretty neat little dog. Hopefully we get to see him a lot more. I haven't seen the dog. I haven't seen Ember on any of the covers or anything mentioned just yet, but, I don't know. We'll see how that happens. But your thoughts on this Master and Apprentice group here?
This is probably my favorite dynamic in the book so far, and Loden, probably my favorite character so far as well.
Really?
Yeah, I just love it. I mean, this is a little bit. If there was someone to shove you off the side of a cliff because he believes you can do something, this is the guy. This is the guy that's going to do it. He's like, I know you can do it, and then just gives you the push. Right. Yeah, good luck. Knock it out. But he's always taking care of it. The really cool thing about this character, though, and we get this really early on in Light of the Jedi, is that he is just his commitment to constant improvement of himself and the way that he works Bell constantly. There's never a day off type of thing, and but it's always this drive that I think is probably contributing a bit to Bell's insecurity of sorts, but also he realizes that it's also making him a better Jedi because of it, and that he's having these advantages that others don't have because of this just natural teacher that Loden is. And he's just so, and again, the dry humor is just perfect. And their banter between them is very good. And it's very meaningful. And you can sense the bond that they have. So I think it's really important that we get more of this interaction. And I think Bell was just such a captures the youthful enthusiasm, but you can already see the wisdom of sorts coming through. If he can just get his insecurities under control just a little bit. Yeah. But this was an excellent dynamic between these characters. And when everyone gets around to reading Light of the Jedi, I think you'll start to feel some of that.
Yeah. You're almost forced to focus on these characters, so you won't have a choice. But yeah, they're definitely standouts. So, okay. So we're going to it's going to start thinning out a little bit in terms of how much we go on about these guys, because these are kind of, I'm going to say they're ancillary because Boryaga certainly has his role in this. He's got a fan base already. There's Twitter accounts. There's people starting up shows. Guys, why can't you look like this thing? I've seen those already posted. He's great. And I think one of the really cool thing is, and it works with some characters more than others, but when they went into this, they really wanted to create traits for all of these characters. And again, like I said, you get glimpses of them in Light of the Jedi, but it is something they're going to be hitting on as the books go on. But Boryaga's the funniest thing. He's like almost, I'm not going to say he's antisocial, but he's like probably a lot of us. We get into a party and we don't want to be the center of attention. We don't want to go mingle. We don't want to go do all of this stuff. We just want to get this over with so we can go back home and do whatever we want. He's got that about him, which is really like relatable for a lot of people. And I think that's why he's just resonated with a lot of folks. And part of it is because he can't speak, people don't understand him. Right. And so there's a natural reason for that. But when you get to hear in his mind what he's going through and just the thought process of, I really don't want to be here. This is really uncomfortable. Please don't talk to me, that kind of thing. I mean, it's a very unique trait for somebody that you would, expect to be outgoing as a Jedi, right? They would want to be, not to say he's not helpful or anything. He ends up being, pretty, I guess, a prominent character here. And he is in some other books here a little bit later. And then on the right-hand side, that's Nib Aztec, which is his master. She's talked about in Light of the Jedi, but very briefly, so don't worry about seeing her. She comes up in the kids' book, like the 6 to 8 year old kid book. But beyond that, so far, nothing else. But what do you think of Boryaga?
I loved it. He really captures the essence of Wookiees, I think, which is great, right? As a culture, we expect the Wookiees to be kind of hard and in tune and with other people. And Boryaga really exemplifies that. And really, he just, I mean, like you said, he's like us, where he's in a party and he doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't want the attention, but at the same time, when he feels or senses something unique, he's able to then, go to that and give it the attention. But you're right. We have this language barrier, which we've seen so often. If I could just communicate with you, we could get done. And what's so cool about his interaction with his master has actually learned, Shuriwook. So they can communicate. And so it's really cool to see and hear that, because of course it gives us some, throwbacks of Han Solo and Solo, but that the master would take the time to try to communicate, I think is really important. And again, it shows these bonds, and that we can have Jedis of all type, or Jedi of all type, I guess it's plural and singular.
Right.
Without sacrificing that character, and still have them be true to their race and their culture and everything else.
So here's two characters. Again, they're both, it was really hard to write these because I want to get into a lot of stuff. You've got Indira Stokes, who's on the left-hand side. She's on the cover of the alternate cover for Light of the Jedi that you got if you bought the socks. It's like you buy the socks and they give you the book, I think is how it works. And then you can barely see him there, but that is Porter Engle. I know JW or somebody was throwing out shout outs to Porter Engle. He is a character, a standout character for sure. And I won't spoil anything there, but he's basically a retired Jedi. He once known as the Blade of Bardota, but now he's retired, so he's just a cook. But he's old Jedi, and he's got his moments in there. So it's a great character. You'll love him. I assure you that. And Adira Stokes is someone who's going to show up a little bit later too. Again, she's in here. She has a pivotal role in the book, but you probably could not pay attention to who she is, and you'd be just okay. Right. She's just a Jedi right now. She again will have more influence a little bit later, but.
What I like so much about Porter Engle, though, is how the other characters, they kind of view him as the grandfather of sorts.
Yeah.
But then they see things that he can actually do, and their minds are just blown.
Right.
They didn't realize he was even capable of all these things. And then they just see the intensity and some of that. And so it's really great to see the younger characters with someone that they probably thought highly of, and it was very kind, but doesn't really understand what he was capable of. But we also get the perspective of an aging Jedi and what that means, and what happens when your use of the Force is a bit degraded, and what happens when you get older. What happens to Jedi when they stop being active Jedi.
Right. Yoda notwithstanding, right?
Library.
Yeah, I was going to say, do Castle New notwithstanding, Yoda notwithstanding. Certainly get to see that aspect of them. So he's awesome.
Because we just can't die.
Right.
That's all we've seen.
Fade away into nothing.
Right. So this is a really cool character. Again, not a huge pivotal thing in the whole book, but such an amazing character.
Okay. Yoda's in this.
Never seen this guy.
Spoiler alert. Never heard of this character. Okay, no, seriously. So Yoda's in this book. And I think when we were talking about this series, we were really concerned that, is it going to focus on him, or we're going to get a lot of Yoda? Because if you've listened to the show with any regularity, you know that he's not one of my favorite characters, and I don't hate him. He was my childhood growing up hero for a long time. And then as I got older, I realized he wasn't the greatest kind of person, but some of that's not his fault. But again, we're not doing a Yoda dissection here. But he's in this, and he's on the sidelines though, which is good, right? He's in there very briefly in Light of the Jedi. He appears in the Marvel comic again very briefly. He's just got like this support role, but he's just kind of come in cameo, and he's like the Stan Lee of Star Wars books right now. He just has this little quick appearance. So he's kind of and he's doing his teaching thing, right? They make mention that he's got Padawans, and so you don't get to see any of that stuff. So it's good. I didn't really want them to focus on him, but now that may change because he is as powerful as you probably could be at this point. So we don't know what he's capable of doing just yet. And my gut tells me that as things start to deteriorate, or they find themselves in really tough situations, it's people like Yoda that I think they're going to have to rely on to kind of come in and save the day, much like you would expect, much like we saw in The Mandalorian, right? In the final chapter of season 2 with Luke Skywalker coming in and saving the galaxy. He's probably capable of doing something on that level. So we'll see let's see if they, break the glass at any point to kind of pull him in here.
Yeah. And Yoda's such a challenge, like we've talked about before, of how do we make him a little bit different, but still capture the essence of who he is. I think so far they've done a really good job of that. He is revered, but he's not like the council, right? He's not looked at as the council. It's a shared pool, and he's going to be very prominent, I believe, in the High Republic Adventures, which is the IDW comics, with his students, because I think that focuses more on the student that he's with. So we get him more. They describe him more as a journeyman at this point, which I think is really cool. That basically Yoda's in the field, right? He's not just
right.
Pulled up at Jedi. I mean, we could argue that in Clone Wars he was all over the place as well, but he was still always on the deck of a starship, or mostly. And we know he was in some with the battles with the clones and whatnot. But it's really cool that we get him both with the Padawans, but we also see him in the field. And I hope this is the one I'm excited about, is the High Republic Adventures. How does this integrate Yoda into those stories? And how do we maybe get back some of the Yoda that we feel like we might have lost over time? And maybe that changes our perspective on it. Maybe it powers some people further, but I just really want to see Yoda at his, like you were saying, really at his pinnacle, really at his peak, to where we feel like this is the Yoda that was, so that we can see the Yoda that he became. And for the good and the bad of all of that. So I think this is a really cool character, and I like that they've tweaked him just enough visually to be a little bit younger, but not too much to where he's completely different.
Right. Yeah. He doesn't look like Grogu.
Right. Right.
Which would be odd. Okay.
Where's his Graham?
Yeah. Right. So these are the other two. This is like we're getting the band back together. So Yarl Poof and Oppo Rancis. So if you guys know these characters, they're from the Phantom Menace. There were some Clone War episodes where they were featured. I think didn't they call Oppo like the snake guy or whatever? Snake Jedi? I don't know.
Something like that.
He looks like a snake, I think, at the bottom. He doesn't have legs or something. I can't remember now. But both of these fine folks are in the novel. And again, they're ancillary. They're just in the background. They make mention of them. I don't even know that they show them, to be honest. I can't remember if the comics show them or not. But they are mentioned. I think actually they both show up at one point in Light of the Jedi. But you'll see the names. Don't focus on them. They're just there to say, look, these guys are still around. The one that was interesting, though, was Yaddle. Because Yaddle is of the same race as Yoda. And they've not mentioned her yet. So I don't know, maybe she's a late bloomer. Maybe she didn't come in until, some point later down the road. But I guess there's a possibility that she still could be in here.
Well, presumably we have thousands of Jedi at this point, too.
Yeah.
So we'll get to all of them in the third book.
Right. Okay. And then let's talk about, lastly, before we get into the baddies here, this is Chancellor Lina So.
Yep.
I think that's how her last name's pronounced.
That's how I've been reading it. Yep.
Yeah. So Lina So. Boy, she is the Chancellor, and this is a stark difference than any Chancellor that I can think of ever, really. I don't know that they've ever done one like this.
And what the leader you want.
Yes, right. She is the uniter. She is the one with the vision. She is if you want to compare it to a forefather, right, of our country here in the U.S., right? You think about George Washington, these guys, these people that had big visions and big dreams and really were wanting wanting this more quote perfect union.
Right.
This is how she comes into this, which is again, and it's like, okay, it's like you said earlier with like Avar Chris, you're trying to poke holes into, well, maybe she's not perfect. Maybe she's not really all that, but so far she really is. And she's got very earnest, wants and desires. I mean, she really wants everybody to be peaceful, and she's trying to bring the galaxy together. She does these things called the works, right? She has a list of these they call them the works, things that she's done.
Works.
These major accomplishments, which the first one that is Starlight Beacon, right? So we'll talk about that here in a minute, but that space station is by her, not her design, but it was something that she really wanted because she felt that the galaxy needed something like that in order to feel more unified, which brings up a whole lot of other questions. But yeah, I mean, she's got a vision. She's very committed. Just a stark difference to these corrupt chancellors that were supreme chancellors that we've had in the past or seen in other Star Wars mediums. But it's very interesting. And the only other thing, and I'll let you speak. The one thing that I hope happens is, are we going to see her fall? Like, is she just too good? Right. Is that inevitable that something's going to go wrong? And how does she deal with that right now? But right now it seems like she's infallible. Like, there's some really great stuff that she's trying to do here.
Yeah, and that was actually what I was going to say. Every opportunity that she has that you would expect her to maybe veer off course, like we were talking about with Avar Chris, just doesn't happen. And she keeps answering the right way, or the way that you think, well, that makes the most sense. Or she is truly committed to, we are the Republic, every one of us. And we are going to reach out as far as we can to share our influence in the most positive way we can. And it's really one of acceptance and trying to make the galaxy a unified front, and a very positive unified front. And it's even encapsulated with, maybe you remember a little bit of this in the book, but the part of Coruscant that's not quite all
covered up
and everything. Yeah. There's a piece of Coruscant that still exists that's of the planet's actual nature, and it's preserved and it's there. And she's been one of the protectors of it, which I think is just fantastic. I mean, it just speaks to her character of being able to connect to the past, but again, go to the future. Now, I will say this though, the idea of, I don't know if she's the one calling them the great works, but that does seem a little self-indulgent. And so maybe it's other people that are calling it that on her behalf, and it's not her. But the way that it kind of felt like was that, she felt they were now the great works, which maybe that's a bit of vanity creeping in, or maybe that's just how I read it. And I've still got a few pages left of the book, so maybe some things changes. But
yeah, you're not wrong. Like, I don't remember. Like, I don't think she calls it that. I think Porter Engle mentions it, or I think it's Porter Engle that says it. And there is where was it else said? Somewhere else they said that.
I think, two or three different characters, I think, say it.
Yeah. So I don't know that that would be a little self-indulgent if that's really what happened.
But this is the leader you want. I mean, the one that the Republic never had. This is the one that this is the one that the High Republic had, and you can see why they're doing so well, and why things seem so good and right and peaceful for the most part. Yeah,
I think Jeff nailed it. He said Lina So is the perfect mix between Franklin D. Roosevelt and Joe Exotic. So if you can put that together in your mind, that's kind of what we got here. Right. And then just the Targons on the left and right there, they mentioned those. They're not a really prominent thing, but it's part of the artwork, and I didn't want you to be like, what are those? So she's got these pet lions essentially with the art, with like 4 eyes and all that. They just kind of hang out there with her, which is cool. Okay, let's get into the bad guys. The Nihil. So the origin of the name, I saw an interview with Charles Soule on this. It's not a big surprise. He was looking for something that was, it was a play on nihilist, right? Nihilism as well as annihilation. And so that kind of tells you what probably is maybe foreshadowing there in the name a little bit in terms of where they're going. Oh, let's see. How would, so I want to save it for the Light of the Jedi review. But I'll say this, they have the potential to be really good bad guys for the Jedi. And I know people had a lot of concerns. How are these guys going to be pitted up against the Jedi, especially the Jedi that we have in the High Republic?
Right.
There is potential there. I'll just kind of leave it at that. Right. It's still to be determined. We start getting pieces of that in Light of the Jedi. But there was enough there that maybe like them, and probably more their leader than anything else. But I've got a picture of him in just a little bit. But your thought, I guess, on on the Nihil and what they were. And I guess you can share with them what you took away as far as what they're like. Are they marauders? Are they bounty hunters? Are they Vikings? Is another term I've heard. But how did they come across to you?
Yes, they're all the above.
Right.
Yeah, when they're introduced, they're painted more as like basically pirates, right? Even somewhat what we saw in Resistance actually is kind of the mental image I had reading through the book, and I think to an extent that was correct. But then we start to see that there is a cohesion to them. There is a bit of a collaboration when there is, but there's also that ruthlessness that you get, but also the self-interest. So it's this very interesting dynamic. But what they do is they recognize the power of their group and of the Nile in general. And I don't know how, maybe you're saying it right. Is it Nihil? Do we actually get pronunciation on this?
So Sol said Nihil when he did the interview, but that's how I say it. So I don't know.
That works for me. So the Nihil. And again, so we get this, we're not really sure what they are for a lot of the time. And they have these really cool things that they can control from Marchion Ro that are really interesting and give them a really distinct advantage,
right?
And when they're with how they are able to move around the galaxy and really kind of appear out of nowhere, and they are known throughout the galaxy, and they've avoided the eyes of the Jedi, and that was temporary, of course. So it's interesting to see how they're going to develop and how serious of a threat they can be for the Jedi. Because again, they have numbers. So you think, okay, maybe they could swarm them. But like you said, the Jedi right now are at the pinnacle of their ability. But there are some distinct advantages that the Nihil have via the eye, Marchion Ro, that I think are really, really cool and something we can really expand on. But yeah, they are ruthless. They are the agents of chaos. They take what they want. They get rid of the rest and they destroy everything that they want to do. And they just, it doesn't matter. They have no conscience for the most part either. So.
Yep. That's a good way to explain it. Yeah. They're almost unconscious about some of the things that they do and their actions. On the left-hand side there, again, this is concept art. So there's really no characters. Although the characters on the right, I believe, are in the Rising Storm, I think.
Yes,
because you can see in the background, he kind of looks like a Kratos kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
On the left-hand side, I think that's supposed to be Lorna D, and we'll talk about her. So you've got, let me do this. Why don't we talk about, so that's Marchion Ro. So he's the leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Marchion Ro, you definitely got to pay attention. Well, you don't have a choice with him. We'll come back to him in just a second, but he's the leader. And then underneath him, I guess in the chain of command, there's three leaders, okay? There's Kosov, which is not really pictured here because that's not his character. Kosov is, I forget the race, but it's that big sluggish thing that we saw in Maz's castle that was just kind of sitting there with the spy that was turned like that really big hulking character. That's that race. That's what Kosov is. And then you've got Lorna D, who's a Twi'lek right there. And then you've got Pan Eta, or I'm getting it confused now. I think Pan Eta is actually the big hulking thing, right? He's a big brutish guy. Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
But so just quickly, so Kosov is a weak way. That's what it was. Kosov is a weak way. And then each of these guys all have their own individual teams. And so, and they do a pretty good job of explaining like the chain of command and how they're broken up into different groups and all of that. So we don't really need to get into that, but they've all got different personalities. Kosov is very loud. He's very brash. They mention he's always the first to talk, never shuts up.
Right.
You've got Lorna D, who's really cynical. She's cold, very collected in terms of how she approaches everything, really. And then you've got Pan Eta, who's kind of like this really big, brutish
Hulk smash.
Hulk smash kind of character. They all have their individual ships, and because of time, we're just going to skim over this. But just quick thoughts on how did you? Now, again, I don't want to get into reviewing this, but
sure, yeah. Well, I thought they're called tempests, is what each of their groups are called, and they like you're saying, they have a ranking system, and so it's really cool to get that flavor of how do they keep organized and how do they move up the ranks, and they give you actually some very clear examples of what works and what the consequences are if you fail.
Right.
And so you really do get a sense for what each character represents, and they really put that front forward, that foot forward, that you really do get a great essence of what each brings to the table, strengths, weaknesses, and then how Marchion Ro understands them as well, and how he sees his position amidst all of this kind of organized chaos of sorts, and that what the role of the I is when he doesn't really have any true power. It's really interesting. You have a leader without power, basically, but he really yields ultimate power. It's really interesting. I'm not explaining it very well, but it's a really interesting manipulative type of situation there that we have between these four characters.
Yep. And so with that, Marcia Rowe is the leader of the Nihil. You mentioned already, they call him the Eye of Nihil. There's a whole story into that in terms of what that means. He's very mysterious. He's a very complex character. I have a feeling that everything is going to go through this guy. Like everything that's about to happen, everything that's going to, and I get this is one character I really don't want to say a lot of because I think it's going to pull back. It's going to take a lot out of it. So as you're reading the book, please pay attention to everything. And there's way more to it. Like I didn't even include some of the other characters that this guy's in contact with and all that because they're really great, like eye opening. Like, whoa, what the heck are you talking about here? But yeah, this is a character that probably goes through. He's probably the only character that actually goes through some real growth in this book. And I don't know if you've gotten to that part yet.
No, don't spoil it for me.
So I'm not going to spoil anything. But he does go through a growth, and it's from that you get the sense that this is a game changer. Things are really going to start changing here. So, and that's kind of where it ends. It's literally almost at the very end of the book. So, but yeah, that's all I'll say. Very great character. I'm really excited about him. Probably again he was one of the standout, not my favorite character, but certainly one of the standout characters. And there's a lot of potential. Again, he is kind of, to me, it feels like he is the catalyst of what's about to happen with the fall of the High Republic. So good stuff there. That's a ship there. We're getting real low on time, so I want to go through it. This is interesting though. The ship that you see here on the left, that is the Vector. And so you're going to see, as you're reading this book, you'll hear the term Vector ships a lot. They really get into the details about how, and we'll save it for the show, but they use their lightsabers to
as a key
to start the ships, which is awesome.
Really cool. Yeah.
They're really cool. And there's another vehicle, which I didn't get into, the wheeled vehicle or the land vehicle as well. There may be other vehicles as well, but this concept of them being able to use their lightsabers to power these ships and stuff is awesome. I really enjoyed that. On the bottom right-hand corner, that's the long view. You'll hear that. You'll hear this talked about all the time, this right. type of a ship. That's the visual that I wanted to at least present to you so you could kind of get a sense of what that looks like as well. And there's a lot of other ships in here. There's plenty more that I didn't include, but those two come up probably a lot more than some of the others. And then let's talk about the Starlight Beacon. So, this is on the front of the cover of Light of the Jedi. It is the central piece. It's almost like I don't want to use a Deep Space Nine kind of analogy, but it very much feels like Deep Space Nine. And that's probably not accidental. When you go back and watch all the interviews and the behind the scenes stuff of Project Luminous and those guys, like Claudia Gray's a huge Star Trek fan, a huge Star Trek fan. I would argue she knows more about Star Trek than she does Star Wars. And that's not a knock. She knows a lot about both, but they obviously said there was a lot of things that were influenced. They when they came into this project, they wanted to tap into the things that they personally enjoyed about other science fictions and put a Star Wars twist on it. Right. I'm not saying that this is where this came from, but it is still a cool concept. And the whole point, without ruining a lot here, is this is at a time when the Outer Rim is not been explored, or the outer regions have not been explored, where people are just now getting out to the core. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that because I'm so drudged in all of the old Republic lore, right. And I have a lot of questions as to why. But whatever, maybe it's a reset. I don't know. Maybe some catastrophic event happened, but it feels like they're just now getting out of the core systems for some reason, and maybe they'll explain that a little bit later. But that said, the Starlight Beacon is out there because they need people to know that, hey, we're all connected. We're all one galaxy. There's some benefits to this with, in the way of communications. This thing does everything. It's got like a hospital place. It does fine cuisine. They've got things brought in from all over the galaxy as like museums, artifacts type of scenario or things. They've got a Jedi presence there, right. Which is really neat, which is we're going to see a lot of the comics go from. But it is kind of like this focal point of the galaxy. And I think what it does, it's emblematic of what the galaxy is going through right now in this kind of unification and let's all grow together. And this is one of the works, again, that Lina So had put together. This was her vision. She wanted something like this out there to kind of help, again, bring the galaxy together and show some unity or some kind of, multicultural collaboration between the planets and all of that. So,
right.
What did I miss on that?
No, I think it's important that it's not Coruscant. It's not a world. It's not a core world, right? It's something unique. Like you said, it's something that they had to come together to build and to continue to make it grow and to be a symbol for the galaxy. That, I mean, the beacon is so, there's so much symbolism with that, right? Of what you could take with that. And I think it's really a great idea. And I share some of your confusion a bit, because we learned there are a lot of things that are relatively new. Like they don't have hyperspace lanes out to the outer rim yet, right? And they don't, back to still not really a thing yet. And hyperspace in general doesn't feel like it's really all that well developed all the time. So there's a lot of question marks as to how all of these things fit within our head timelines that we've gotten around. I'm sure this is really making your noodle scratch with all the old Republic stuff that's, of course, established all of these things as real.
Yeah.
But I like that the Starlight Beacon is just something that everybody can come together. I agree with you. It does feel a bit like Deep Space Nine, which I think is fine. It's something that we all came together to create. It's something that the whole galaxy takes seriously, and they all take pride in. And I think that's and we get that feel in Light of the Jedi quite a bit, that some people have a bit of a distant connection with it, but there's others that really do signify this thing is a really big deal and something that really will enlighten the rest of the galaxy and bring them into the Republic. And that's the goal. Lina So wants to bring everybody into the Republic. And it's almost cult-like with this whole "We Are the Republic" type of chant that they have going on here. But they fundamentally believe this stuff. And the whole galaxy seems to, or most of the galaxy seems to really buy into it. So I guess it's a great cult, a great punch.
Right, great punch. You're right. There's a you have a vested interest in in falling in line with the Republic because everyone's contributed to the construction of this in some way.
And everybody benefits from the Republic.
Right.
It's so starkly different than what we had before. There's actually a benefit for being in the Republic, and people want to be part of it.
Yep. Yeah. Very different, like stark contrast to what I guess we're used to seeing with our old school Star Wars. So, but this is all good stuff. Okay. Let's see. Let's talk about some of the other books that are coming out, and we'll keep this short because there's some of these books we don't have a lot of details. So The Rising Storm is the next official novel, like the full-length novel that's coming out. This doesn't come out to June 29th, right? So if you're sticking to those novels, you've got the better part of, 5 months still before this thing hits. This
July.
is
July 6th, I think it was the last date I'd seen.
I thought they moved it up. Maybe not.
I saw 2 dates. I didn't know which. Yeah, June 20-something, 29th. Yeah, and then I saw July 6th. Moved up.
Okay.
Or whatever it is.
It's somewhere in there, like that last week of June, early first week of July. But the synopsis: Padawan Wreath Silas, which is it's not actually, no, that's not the right one. Where's it at here? I don't think I have it on here. But so this one, we don't have a lot of details on it. You get to see Stella and Geos, which is right there. Ty York is finally introduced here. This is where you're first going to get to see her. We've not talked about her. She's a saber for hire. Is how they described her, and she's a monster hunter, which we'll get a lot of a little bit later. That seems kind of exciting for me, and I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy, and then we get to see Bell Zettifar, who I said was like one of my favorite characters from the Light of the Jedi. They're all going to be a part of this, and so this is where Stella and Geos is really going to get his focus. He's really going to start to shine. You're going to get a lot of background on who he is, because again, he wasn't really covered that deeply in Light of the Jedi. So. Let's move on to the next one. So this is, again, that's the only other main novel that's on the books as of right now. Let's see. This is Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. This is a young adult novel, and this one is coming out February 2nd. This one's going to feature. This one does feature Wreath Silas, as well as Leox. What is it? Gaiaxy? I forget. I was the guy that looks like Matthew McConaughey here on the right hand side.
Yes.
So this was hers. In this one, I've had a chance to read this one as well. I think it comes out February 2nd. So you should start seeing non-spoiler reviews very shortly. I think the dates, I think they've already lifted that cloud for that. And then the spoiler reviews happen like a couple days before, around there. But, I will say this: Wreath Silas is a very interesting character. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say, just character traits wise, he is a Jedi that really doesn't want to be out doing, he doesn't want to be the adventurous Jedi. He can, but that's not his thing. He's more of a bookworm. He wants to study, he wants to read, learn, and he gets put in a position where he has to be the adventurous Jedi. And to kind of top it all off, like he really struggles with Jedi powers and talents. Like he's not very good at it. I'm not saying he can't do it, but like what would take a normal Jedi, what would normally be effortless for most Jedi, he really has to work at it to get it to happen, which is, can't think of another time that we've seen Jedi like that. They're always portrayed as these, like, they can do everything out of they may not be successful, but they can wield these powers at will without any problems, where this guy's not like that. He does have a problem with it. He's really got to like focus and try. And then the other characters are Dees and Comac. Those are two Jedis that are introduced. So there's a total like 3 or 4 in this book. And there's other characters as well, which we won't get into just because of time. So it's a really good book. It's a fast read. I think I read this within a day. So pick this one up if you're into that, because again, it's Claudia Gray. You can't go wrong. Did you get this one on the ebooks? Have you had a chance to look at it?
This one's what I start next after I finish up the Jedi. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll talk more after you're done then. Okay. Let's see. Also in this book, we're introduced to the Drengir, or Drengar. I said Drengir. I don't know if I'm pretty sure that's how it's said, but Drengir. So this thing was shown in the original trailer for the High Republic. They're more menacing than you think. They're anytime you think about like plant life and how they just don't really have a conscience or a soul, that can be kind of a scary thing. And so again, I don't want to ruin anything, but the premise is they retreat to a space station. They have to be on this space station. They seek shelter here, and they run into these guys. And from there, things happen. Lots of stuff happens. And the end result are things that probably could have repercussions a little bit later down the road. I know that's super high level, but it's a good one. Pick it up. Let's talk about Out of the Shadows. So this is another young adult novel. This is written by Justina Ireland. This comes out July 27th. So we got a few months here before this comes out.
Right.
It's her first. It's the first young adult novel that Ireland, or the second one actually at this point that she's done, because she did Test of Courage as well.
Right.
And this one is interesting because it does introduce, like you mentioned, Vern, right?
Right.
Do you want to, do you have some background on her? Do you want to talk about her? She's in the bottom right-hand corner down here.
Yeah, I've got some own stuff. Yeah, so Vernestra Rowe, is that how we pronounce her? R-W-O-H,
Yep,
Rowe.
Rowe. Mm-hmm.
Right, she's a Mirielon. I don't know what that is. But it's, so anyway, she's a prodigy apprentice. So she achieves knighthood at like the age of 15. Yeah. And it's the youngest in a generation. So you get all of these new, this kind of new flavor, this new perspective on what it means to be a young Jedi. And she actually ends up becoming the caretaker of people will recognize the name, but a girl named Avon Staros. And we had a little more of that thing. But what's really cool about Vern is that she is crafty and she likes to tinker. And we won't spoil it too much. I think it's already out there in the open, but she does something unique with her lightsaber that we've seen in some EU things, I believe, but and a little bit here and there. But I think it's going to be really interesting. And so I think that's the nice thing about this is we get a completely different perspective, because of her age and the challenges that come with it about being a young prodigy and the expectations you have not only of yourself, but the doubts that can bring as well, because people expect so much of you and whether or not you can live up to that. And we've seen that a bit with Anakin, of course, but to have it in this time frame when the galaxy seems at peace, and then to have a bunch of, of that uncertainty thrust at you now, when maybe the Jedi aren't quite ready for it either, is an interesting component that we'll have to see how they decide to explore. And Justine Ireland gets a first crack at her.
Yep. And you mentioned Avon Soros. She's in this. She's in a few books here in just a minute as well. So I think she's supposed to be like 12 years old, I think, or just right at like 13 years old.
Right. And
she's not a Jedi. She's more like a scientist. She's interested in the Force, but she's interested in the more scientific aspects of it. And I hear that, and I wonder if she's really going to get into like midichlorians, if they're going to try to dig into that a little bit. I don't know that they will, but if Qui-Gon's all about it, and the Council's all about it, and the Phantom Menace, why not? I mean, it seems like it wouldn't be that far of a stretch for somebody like her having an inquisitive mind to kind of understand the scientific application of like midichlorians and how that symbiotic relationship works outside of the just the mystical, if you will. But
and it'll be curious what their perspective is on midichlorians at this timeline as well.
Yeah, it's not been mentioned yet.
Right. As hesitant as we are to talk about those things, I think there are definitely some interesting components too. We can, well, I don't know. I'm kind of interested in hearing it there, see what they think about it at this time.
So Jeff said he's interested about more about a Star Wars story, not a Star Wars story, a Star Wars story. They asked her about that, by the way. They asked Justina Ireland if there was any relation to another well-known Star Wars character in the comic book world, if you're following the Disney Star Wars comic, the main title. And she said, I guess she said yes, but it's like one of these things where it's so many generations back that,
right.
Is there really a direct influence? Probably not, but she could have the same name. Hey Albert, I've been meaning to ask, what are midichlorians? Dante, another time, man, another time.
Leave it to Utini to throw a wrench and everything.
Yeah. Okay, so this one is the other one is Test of Courage. This was good. It wasn't the best by any means, but it was fun. If you're a quick reader, you'll blitz right through this book. Honestly, it takes no time whatsoever. This is out now. It is aimed at kids 8 through 12, so you can think you think about the writing style itself is just so fast.
Yeah, they're calling these junior novels, I believe.
Yeah, junior novels, or I think mid grade. I think is what I've also heard them say. I don't know if that's the right terminology or not. But these guys are all on a ship. It gets knocked out of hyperspace. They get stranded on a planet, and they basically have to survive. And it's kind of a rescue thing. And so through that, it's almost like I say, it's Lord of the Flies. But you get all these young kids put together, and you've got Vernestra Rowe, right? Vern is leading them, and she's not much older than them, but because she's that prodigy child, they're looking at her almost as a peer when really she's not. So there's an interesting dynamic there as well. The character in the middle, Imri, was it Kantaros? Yeah. He's only 14 years old. He's a primary focus. So if you go ahead and pick this one up, he's got a very interesting arc. And I'll kind of leave it at that. So, they don't really mention them in any of the stuff they talked about, and that's for probably good reason because of what's happening. So just keep your eye on that character. There's some similarities with other characters as well. You've got Avon Staros again. You can see her down there in more of a kid format on the cover of that. You get the droid at J6, which is her droid. In the interest of time, we won't talk about that. And then you've got Honesty Weft, who is the son of a diplomat. He's the kind of kid in the background. But they're all, nothing really shines out for these characters. I mean, they're all unique and they've got their own quirks, personalities, and it all works really well. So, and it's not necessary. And I want to make that clear. You don't have to read these books to understand the main story. They're just kind of ancillary. In fact, this really has nothing to, it does. They're impacted by the great disaster from Light of the Jedi.
Right.
But what they do in here doesn't impact the other stuff that's going on. So these really are kind of side stories if you're one of these completionists and you've got to have this comprehensive what's going on with the High Republic type thing.
Right. But again, you still get that. They weave in and out of each other, though.
Yeah.
So they cross paths from time to time, but not in a necessarily significant way. But it's cool that you can go get that backstory from somewhere. I think the comic is probably going to flirt with more than that than anything else. I think the main comic.
Yep. Okay. All right. So now we're getting into what we really don't know a lot of, but this is Race to Crash Point Tower. This is a kid's book, ages 8 through 12, so a little bit older. This is Daniel Jose Older, and the main character here is Ram Jamaram, which I think is one of the coolest names. It's right up there with what is it? Scissor. What's his name now? I forgot the name.
Scissor Punch.
Scissor Punch. Yeah, Jeff, where are you, man? I need you. But yeah, so this is Ram Jamaran, and he's kind of like he's a Jedi. He's more of a tinkerer, more of a scientist again. Doesn't really want to. He's not out there trying to save lives for the most part. Right. And what's really interesting is we get another one of Lina So's works. So she's creating this. I think they call it like a galactic fair, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Where they're having. It's almost like the World Fair, where they bring all these nations together, and you can see all the different cultures, and they do this. Well, they do that on his home planet, and with it comes stuff that happens that puts him in. It's kind of like the call to action, puts him into the the center of a mid-adventure. And what you see him riding on there is his robot that he's built, his droid, not his robot, sorry. Wrong terminology. That's his droid. I forgot what it was, the name. I think it was like it's K-18, or I can't remember the name of the droid. Anyways, he's got this V-18, that's what it is, V-18. Is a droid that he's got there, and the droid can fly. So think of like what was the Disney movie with
Big Hero 6?
Yeah, Big Hero 6. Kind of similar in that tone, I guess, if you will, where he rides that thing. On the right hand side there, these little they're called bomb bracks. These are his think of like the pit droids from Phantom Menace, only they've got, they're real, they've got personalities, but they're his crew, right? So he's kind of like a gearhead more than anything. He's always, and that's why you can see he's got grime and everything all over his Therm scissor punch. Thank you. So that's who he is. Sorry, I was just reading the chat here. No scissor punches that I've seen so far, but we've got a lot of books that go out, but that would be great. Okay, and let's see. This one was, what was this? June 29th?
Summertime.
Summertime. And then this one's out already, The Great Jedi Rescue. You can order the hard copy. I didn't order the hard copy. I tried to order the digital copy, and the digital copy doesn't come out till like in 2 more days or something like that for whatever reason. But it's like 25 pages. This is truly a kid's book, right? It's big pictures and all of that. So, and it's really just a quick story that focuses on Boryaga. I'm trying to remember the names now. Bell, and then this is the Athorian, which we hadn't seen just yet. So this is Mikkel, and he's mentioned in Light of the Jedi, but he's an Athorian Jedi, which is really neat. I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. But this is a really quick story of them, rescuing people, and the text is really big and all that stuff. So again, if you have to have all of them, this is one of them. But you're watching the show right now at 10:30 Central. You're probably not the target audience for this book. Okay, let's talk about the comics. And this is the High Republic #1, and that's the cover for #2. This is by Cavan Scott and Ario Anadito. Anadito, I think is his name. Now you've had a chance to read this one. What did you think about it?
I liked it because it did, when I say they interweave with the story, we get a little bit of the backstory in this comic that we had in the book of what was going on with the christening of Starlight Beacon and some of those stories back behind there. But what I really like about this is we get Keeve Trennis, and I'm really liking her character. It might be because she swears all the time, but don't quote me on that.
Oh my goodness. We have so many curse words. I was already thinking about, sorry, I don't mean to derail or digress, but I want to someone has to create a book or a page or something with all of the known curse words in Star Wars. Yeah. But this lady right now, she's got a potty mouth. Every other thing is coming out, and they're not real curse words. They're Star Wars curse words, but they're funny. But sorry,
but they're hilarious too, because they're right in front of. So she's we were talking earlier about some people idolize Avon. I'm not Avon Staros. Avon Chris. This is one of those times. She looks up to her as a hero. Keeve Trennis does, and she just can't help it. She just keeps swearing, and she's telling herself, "Stop swearing," and then she does it again. She goes, "No, seriously, stop!" In her head, this is all her mental. And Avon Chris is just kind of taking it in stride. But the dynamic with her and her master is also really fun because we have a Trandoshan Jedi with only one arm. It will grow back though. So, but it's really interesting dynamic and a different character for us. And I just found a lot of amusement in it. So I'm excited to see where this goes. Is this like a 6-part series, or is this an ongoing series?
It's ongoing as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought there was. Yeah. Good. I hope so. It seems like it's another flagship title for us here, but I'm really looking forward to what they do with Keeve Trennis.
Yeah, she's one of the. She's very quick-witted. She's got a lot of doubt about who she is and whether or not she's actually a good Jedi. All of that. Right. We should mention she wields a double-bladed green lightsaber. So double-bladed and green. But then there's a moment in the comic book and it's not really a spoiler. She disassembles it. Did you catch that? And she puts both pieces on. Yeah. But they never show her wield them, turn them on. I'm wondering, can she turn both of them on and then connect it to make a double bladed, which I thought was kind of a cool concept.
Right. Did we have that with Asajj Ventress, I think.
Oh, that's right. She did do that as well. Yeah. So same kind of concept here.
Right. And Skier, her master, the Trandoshan, of course, he's got a little, cover on his hilt. which is another interesting dynamic. But there's something with this character too that we don't know.
Yes.
And there's just something, it just seems like there's something off. And I'm excited to see what they do with what they do and what we learn about that, because they touched on it in the book, and then they certainly have a moment at the end of the first comic. That it's like, okay, something is just not right here. So what's not right here? And so I'm hoping that really, it seems like that's going to come out in the comic book more so than anywhere else. So can't wait to see that. And the second issue drops. Is it this month or next month?
I think it's February.
Yeah. So we've still got a few weeks to go. This is January 17th today. So yeah, still a little ways to go on that one.
Yeah. Skier is he's going to be an interesting character. He's got all the signs, all the makings of a very complex or complicated character, if you will. But we don't know a whole lot just yet. So, and he is mentioned, like, I'm glad you brought that up. He is mentioned in Light of the Jedi. His name comes up. He's there. He's pivotal towards the very end of the book.
Right.
But this is where you're going to see a lot of him. So if you liked him in that book, or you're just interested in this idea of a Trandoshan Jedi, you're going to want to pick up the comic book, because he's going to be featured in that quite a bit. And he's got a good story that's starting to develop. So, so there, yeah. And so these, there's Skier, there's Keeve, that's Master and Apprentice there. And then I forgot to mention, this is Master Stella Maru. He's really, like, he's one of the more intriguing characters out of the comic book. He's almost like this, like, command and control. Like, he sits there, you can see him, he's kind of sitting there floating, hovering, using the Force, but then he's got all these screens, and they, like, it seems like it's only like 3 panels that they really interact with him, but it feels like he's kind of the guy they go to for a lot of information. Like, if they need something right away, he pulls it up, or he can route things and do stuff. So he's almost like a tech head, if you will, but on a Jedi sense. So it's very interesting though to see where he's at. And again, there's a lot of stuff that we'll get into with Light of the Jedi, where they're very different than the Jedi that we see in the Phantom Menace, and how they work and how they rely on each other, more collaboration, more of a tight-knit group. They don't feel like individuals. They feel more like a collective, like a true council, there's all these differences, but the fact that they rely on him in this way is kind of interesting. So I did want to highlight him. I don't know if he becomes a prominent character in the comic book, but he certainly stood out to me as I was reading it.
Yeah, and you get these, I like the dry humor that they have. It's very subtle, but the characters have a way of interacting with one another. You just feel like they've known each other for a long time. Yeah. And they have this banter about them, even if it's very light. And this is one of the characters we have just a little touch of that. It's just really, it just feels good. All of it just kind of feels good as you read through it. It just seems natural. And I think it's really great that that's coming out so quickly and so early.
Yep. This is I think this is from the second issue. We're not going to get into Tarek and Sarek as well. Those are the two on the left and right. Yeah, that's true. One, I don't have a lot of information on them, but they did release this as one of the stills, so you can kind of see where this series is going just from this little picture here. But the artwork is really good too. Okay, and then we've got the High Republic Adventures, and this is aimed towards, I guess, younger audiences in terms of storytelling. So this is Daniel Jose Older that is doing the writing for this one, with the artwork that's being done by, is it Harvey Tolibo? Yeah,
I didn't write that down.
Yeah, Harvey Tolibo. I don't know much about him. Good stuff though. But yeah, and this one is again more focused on Master Yoda training Padawans and all that stuff. So that in itself probably lends itself to a younger audience, which would be kind of cool. But if you're looking for Yoda, you're probably going to get more from this title than you likely anything else at this point. So
I'm really curious how Daniel Jose Older's style translates into this. I think it's going to work really well, actually. And so I don't usually get into the younger comics, like the adventures type of comics. There's some interesting things in them, but they're just not my speed. Mm-hmm. But this is one I may actually have to pick up just to see how it progresses, because I think his writing style is one I think could really fit this really well. And I'm a little curious about what he might do with Yoda, because he's a little bit of a different writer, as we've talked about before with Last Shot, and even with some of his short stories that he's written for from a certain point of view that were really interesting and comical. It was that was actually one of the better stories in that book. But so really curious to see what he does.
Yep, and this is there's a number of characters already. So you see Farzala there. He kind of looks like an elf of sorts, almost like a Link character. You've got Lula, and this is where you're first going to get her kind of introduction and get to kind of see her. We don't know a lot about her. Lula Talisola. You got Court, who's in the back here in the comic book. You can see him here. He's got this. I don't know what race that is, honestly. Almost looks like what was it, Grievous's race? That's not true, but
no, I can't remember what he was anyway.
Yeah, but there's Court and Buck and Bibbs and Torban, Buck. There's all of these characters. There's gonna be a lot of Padawans that are cycling through here. So
right,
again, we don't really have a lot on that one. And then that's Lula as well. She's got a blue lightsaber, single bladed blue lightsaber. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, this is the one I'm probably the most excited for because they've already piqued my interest.
Like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. They piqued my interest with Ty York already. I like her look. She looks like a Nida, like a dark elf. The fact that you see here, it looks like it's underground. So I'm thinking Dritz Jordan from Forgotten Realms. So I'm all over this one already, right? And she's got a purple lightsaber. She's really not a Jedi. She's a Jedi for hire. So, like, is she a Ronin? Is she on her own? Like, I don't have any answers. So these are all, like, honestly rhetorical questions at this point because I just don't have answers for them. But these are things that I'm thinking about and wondering. But this is a graphic novel that's being written by Cavan Scott with Rachel Stott doing the artwork. I don't even think I have a date on this one. I couldn't find anything in terms of when it's coming out.
The graphic novels don't have any dates assigned to them.
Okay,
but it's got to come. It's set before The Rising Storm, though, which is also by Cavan Scott. So yes, you're going to have some synergies here a bit.
Yeah, and where The Rising Storm is supposed to focus on, well, in the moment of what's going on. This is, again, like you said, since this takes place before, we're going to get her background. And what the one thing that stood out to me when they were talking to Cavan Scott, and he was talking about Ty York, is we're going to get to see her viewpoint on the Jedi, is what he said.
Yeah.
So that's like, okay, so wait a minute, what's, again, there's a lot of questions about where she is and how she got there. So I'm pretty excited about that one. And
here's another interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and we really don't have much at all. Justina Ireland is doing this manga comic book. It follows this female Jedi who I don't even think we have a name yet for. But she's wielding single green lightsabers. And how was it? Is she writing it and there's a Japanese translator, or is it the other way around? I couldn't put my finger on which way it was going. Yeah,
she's partnering with Shima Shinya. And so I don't quite understand that. It's going to be illustrated by Mizuki, oh my God, Sakakabara?
Sure. So, yeah,
I apologize. I have completely butchered that. But yeah, so it is a bit of a collaborative effort, which is unclear exactly what that means. But just the style, this is just a really cool style. And we got a bit of this in some of the, what was the show that they gave to us during the Disney call? But we're getting different influence.
Galaxy Adventures.
Yeah. Well, no, we had anyway, there's a TV series.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about Visions.
Visions? There you go. This feels in that same style. So I like that we're getting this in a couple of different mediums here that we can explore. And because it's such a really cool, and again, it's so fundamental to Star Wars and with what George Lucas brought forward from all of the different sources that he was interested in. So I'm really curious. And these lightsabers look fantastic. It's like a katana blade with a lightsaber of sorts.
Yeah.
For visual reference for folks.
Yeah. Beyond that, we
know zero about it.
No, zero. I know that she's supposed to be out on a Jedi outpost somewhere, like where there's not a government, well-established government of any sort, or they're just on an outpost on a planet, and she's kind of as a peacekeeper, I think, is what Ireland had said in the interview. Right. But beyond that, nothing more. So we'll keep you posted on that. And then lastly, let's get into just some of the other stuff quickly here. So, and I'm going to rip through this, so apologies, Jonesy. This is so if you're a subscriber to Star Wars Insider, every month you're going to get a very short story or every 2 months, because this comes out it's by twice what is it, semi-annual?
Yeah.
What's the term? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
every 2 months, right? So the issue for December and January just came out, so we won't get the next one till February. But this first one is called Go Together. It's written by Charles Soule himself. Part 1, Part 2 comes out after that, and I think at that point, Justina Ireland's going to come in. So these main writers that are on these titles are going to be contributing to these short stories that are, I don't want to say they're inconsequential, but because the first one really is. I subscribed to this. I've had a chance to read it. But it does focus on 2 characters from the Light of the Jedi. It's the Androns. I forget their first names now. It's Apika and Joss.
Andron. Yep.
it's really not important who they are. Again, they're small characters. They play a bigger role in Light of the Jedi, and this is like the prequel. At least this short story, and it's very, very quick. So again, if you're trying to complete the collection, if you will, this is something that you want to look out for as well. So these little short stories that pop up.
Yeah, I think it might be Cavan Scott that's doing. I think it's called First Duty. That's going to be issue 201 of Star Wars Insider. I think
okay.
He's after Charles Soule. Yeah.
All right, and then I think it's Ireland after that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
All right, and then the other stuff that you have in terms of content, you've got Star Wars Tales from Galaxy's Edge, which is the Oculus Rift 3-dimensional or the virtual reality game, and the character that pops up here is Sun. Oh, where I wrote this down somewhere. Andy Sun Z, and that's her down here. She's got like the blue lightsaber. She's purple. I have this game. I actually got an Oculus Rift, and I've played the first 10 minutes of it and have not had any time to dig into it. So when I get to that, I will come back and share what all that's happening in it so far. But she's supposed to be in there as well. And they've hinted that she may pop up they say she may. I guarantee you she will. She's going to pop up in future publications at some point. So I don't know a lot about her character, but that is another piece where they're kind of putting their hand, I guess, extending the arm of the High Republic there. We have the High Republic show that's coming out. So this is going to be on YouTube, Star Wars YouTube channel, as well as the is it the main page? I think StarWars.com.
Yeah,
you can see that. So this is going to be. They said it's bi-weekly, so I think it's every 2 weeks and not twice a week. That would be too much. So every 2 weeks they're going to have this. It's hosted by Christina Ariel, and it's going to be like behind the scenes interviews, panels, that sort of thing. They did hint that they were going to do some exclusive reveals and like announcements via the show, similar to what we used to get with like the Star Wars show and This Week in Star Wars, which is the newest iteration of that as well. So,
right.
I don't know how long it's going to be in terms of a format, but the first episode drops Wednesday, January 27th. So what are we?
Just around the corner. 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like 10 days from now.
10 days, yeah.
Yep. So looking forward to that. Let's see how long that is and how much they give us. And then finally, if you wanted to dip your toe in all of this stuff, if you go out to Star Wars Disney books, I think it's books.disney.com. If you go out there, you can download this sampler that gives you the first 7 chapters of Light of the Jedi, the first 4 chapters of Into the Dark, the first 3 chapters of Test of Courage, the first 10 pages of the High Republic Adventures, and the first 11 pages of the High Republic comic book. So you get all 5 of these, the very first parts of them. So you can kind of just get a feel for, is this something that you want to, pursue a little bit further, which I think is great. Like it's free. It doesn't cost anything. You just download it, and they've got every format: Kindle, iBooks, PDFs. I mean, you name it, you can get all that stuff.
It's a good swath, especially if you have a family that's interested in Star Wars. You can give a little bit to everybody and see if they're interested in it. And I think there's lots of like. So I think I'm glad they're doing a bigger pool of that to sample for folks.
Yeah. Okay, and now this comes up a lot.
Yeah.
What's the reading order? Like, how should I be, consuming all of this? And at least right now, the best way, and it's not my way. This is Charles Soule's way, and some of the other authors have chimed in as well. But the best way is to start with Light of the Jedi. Again, that is a very broad in scope and depth type approach. There's a narrow focus on the story. Don't get me wrong, but that really introduces you to a lot of the characters, a lot of the concepts, kind of a state of the galaxy if you at that moment. And then from there, you want to pick up a Test of Courage. So that's kind of run in parallel almost. And then after that is the Marvel comic book. And that picks up right after, almost immediately after Light of the Jedi.
Right.
Then you want to go into the Dark and then finally pick up the High Republic Adventures. These are actually in the order in which they were released. There's probably no shock there. And they had said that originally, but there were still some questions for a lot of people. But this is it. Now, beyond this, I don't know if it's going to be very like serial or linear going forward, or if we're going to have to keep coming back and talking about the reading order, or tell people, hey, don't touch this yet until you've read this thing. There may be some prerequisites and all of that. That's probably likely going to happen given the number of stuff that's coming out, but hopefully they don't make it too complex, right? I think just the natural release schedule will probably dictate the order in which we should be picking this up.
Yeah, over time, it's probably inevitable you're going to get some of that gap filling, but yeah, right now, as they get released, this is the cool thing. We're at the ground level of this thing, so we can consume this, and they're actually spaced nicely apart, where we can not feel completely inundated and rushed. We have time to, read through several pieces of it and then absorb it, and then we'll get something else later on. So I like the pace of the release schedule too. It seems really comfortable right now. We'll see how well this holds up as we get to the end of 2021 and what might be next into 2022.
Yeah. Okay. And then if you have not heard, one of the more recent announcements is, so there are, again, we started the show by talking about how they've got a plan in place and they have planned this out for the next 3 years. So phase 1 is what we're in right now. They're calling that very simply and aptly the Light of the Jedi phase. Phase 2, so phase 1 will go through 2021. They said it will probably extend into, it will extend into 2022. Although, what's his, Michael, is it Siglin? Yep. Didn't say exactly how far into 2022 this will go. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is called Quest of the Jedi. And then phase 3, which is called Trials of the Jedi. We don't know anything about the parts 2 and 3. I'd like to speculate when we talk about, because we're short on time, but Light of the Jedi, when we get into that, maybe we can speculate about some of the things that we'll see and hear. I think it's probably too early to kind of tell, but it's always fun to talk about this stuff. I mean, there's some things that I think are kind of in, maybe implicit or in Quest of the Jedi and what that could mean, or Trials of the Jedi, which I think I have my own feelings about what that is.
But when we look at this and we look at what phase 1 is looking like already, I mean, we're looking 2023, maybe even into 2024 worth of content for High Republic.
Yeah.
Is that what kind of feels like to you?
Yeah. In fact, you said, what I was going to say for like Trials of the Jedi, I'm thinking 2023, but then that lines with Alkalite, right? And Alkalite is that TV show that we everybody knows that at this point, hopefully. That is the Sith TV show, I guess, that we don't know a lot about, but I think 2022 seems too quickly for that one to come in, but maybe, if it falls in with like a phase 3 on Trials of the Jedi, maybe that's what kicks it off, or maybe they find a way to kind of interweave these stories with what's happening with the Alkalite, which I think it would be really cool and exciting to kind of see and read.
I hope so. I'm really excited about this show.
Yeah, I know that's the one you're looking for the most. So yeah, the other thing, Michael Siglin said that they are playing the long game here. So this is a very slow burn in terms of how the content's being released and how the characters are developing and all that. I mean, there is a plan. So it's not a big bang. You're not going to get everything all at once. The cool thing is it's all publication. So you've got plenty of time, at least right now. The spacing seems really good. Plenty of time to kind of bring it all in, and gives us a lot to talk about between now and, season 3 of Mando and, Boba Fett series and all that. So,
yep.
All right. Well, there you go.
Such a stark difference, man, from where we were at just a couple of years. Like, what is next after Rise of Skywalker, right?
Yeah. I'm sure we're sitting there thinking, I'm like, well, I guess we can go dig into the old shows and start redoing, and updating some of the content there and all that. But yeah, I don't think we have time for that at this point.
No.
So that's all we had. I didn't mean for the show to go 2 hours, to be honest, but
we're right on schedule.
Right on schedule. Well, there was a lot to talk about too. So hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you found it helpful. And hopefully if you were kind of on the fence about whether or not to dive into the High Republic, maybe this changed your mind one way or the other. And that's good. That was kind of hopefully mission accomplished from that side, that perspective. But I'm excited. Personally, again, this is I was excited because I'm more of a past kind of guy. I like the historic stuff. That's why I was always hung up on, and even to this day, I'm still hung up on the Old Republic stuff. In fact, once we're done here, I'm going to log in and play SWTOR. But that's always what's interested me the most. I love the idea of origins and where we came from and understanding how we got to where we are, that kind of thing. History has always been interesting to me, but not to say I don't like the forward-facing stuff or the forward-thinking stuff. That's all exciting too. But it was why I was so excited about the High Republic. And I remember crafting the emails out to Del Rey and telling them, like, look, I really want to be a part of this and really want to jump in with 2 feet. And I took some risk in that, I think, because there are a lot of people, it was so unknown. But I think by and large, and we'll talk about this, I have some data and some stats that I've been pulling to kind of make the case for how well, at least, this thing is kicked off, right? Whether it's sustainable, I don't know. Whether it sustains, I should say, I don't know. It's to be determined. But if you look at the reviews, and I'm not talking about the Fandom Menace, I'm not talking about those guys because they hate everything. But if you look at some of the more objective reviews, everything's been pretty positive, at least for Light of the Jedi. So hopefully they can keep this momentum going, and hopefully we're going to get a good solid 3 years of content coming out of Disney publications, and feel like the last thing I feel like I've talked. I had a lot of caffeine tonight, by the way. So if you can't tell,
he ran out of decaf.
I ran out of decaf, and I told Jonesy, I'm like, get ready, because I'm just going to be running my mouth the entire time. But with this, what I'm hoping is to get something I never got from the novels so much. In the old EU, we got it, and that's consequences, right? And this is where Rondo and I agree. We don't always like the same stuff. Most of the time we don't. But we both always agreed that when we had novels and publications that were in between the Skywalker saga and the movies, there were barriers. You couldn't go beyond the barriers, because either you were going to step on something that happened, or you were going to step on something that could happen later down the road, and they didn't want to put the writers and all that into this position of having to justify things and retcon things and all of that. And so they played it really safe. I mean, there were some things that were consequential, but a lot of times they weren't. And so it felt like fluff. It felt like there was no weight to them. And the idea that got me most excited about is that we're going to get a flavor of the old EU where things really did happen. We haven't seen, there's a couple things here and there in the first book, but if you think about it, over 3 years and the number of novels that we're going to get, there's a good chance that we're going to see things that are consequential if you connect with the characters, and if they, you resonate with the characters and you're vested in the story. I think there's going to be a lot here that pays off for it.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think this is a fantastic opportunity. Again, they're not handcuffed anymore, and we'll handcuff ourselves at some point, I'm sure. But that's a great problem to have, and I'm with you. I think this is a opportunity to start clean, I guess, or a clean slate, and really open it up and figure out what's important. And I like this aspect of connecting with the Force specifically, and what does it mean to connect to it? What does it mean for it to be threatened, and that type of thing? And then how does this start to influence maybe what we see in the prequel trilogies?
Right.
And we get those flavors and we get that connective tissue there without having to be limited to those stories and limited to Anakin or something like that. So now we really can dive into something brand new. And I like what you said with the consequences. We have to feel like the characters are at risk, like that we have to care about them, so that when that happens, it's important to us. We feel that emotional gravity when something does happen, and that we do have this fear that this is something that could really, the bottom could fall out. We know it falls out at some point, but what does that journey look like? And, do we see little things here and there, or is it really just a complete, surprise?
Right.
And we're going to see what else comes about all of this, and how much we get. And I'm really curious to see if they take this more into the TV series type of atmosphere, or even a movie. And to see how well this does. If it goes to that point, then I think we're in a pretty amazing shape if that's what they decide to do with it. But again, that's probably another year or so off once we get grounded with this and see how we're doing with it.
Yep. Good points. All right. Well, with that, we're going to end the show there. Any final thoughts? Or actually, well, quickly, thank you to everybody that came out for the live show. And again, apologies, personal apologies for me for not being available last week to do the show. But we're here now, and we're back for the rest of the year. So you got that.
Put it on your tab.
put that one on my tab if you don't mind. Right. So, but yes, thank you for everybody that came out to and joined us in all the great banter and chat that was going on there. It was good stuff. Always good to see some familiar faces. Haven't been on for the better part of 3 weeks. But any final words before we get out of here?
No, go pick up Light of the Jedi. It's a good foothold to get in. So don't be afraid. Just jump in and give it a shot.
And if you are afraid, go get the sampler. At least that'll give you the first 8 chapters and kind of get a feel for the writing style and kind of what's going on. So,
or go pick up the comic, or go pick up this. You got lots to choose from.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah. All right. We'll be back next week with part 1 of The Light of Jedi. So we'll start breaking down that book, getting into some of the characters or storylines, some of the themes, things we like, some things that we, didn't like. All that's going to be part of it. I don't know how many episodes that's going to be. It'll probably be at least 2 episodes, but
13-part series.
It'll be a 13. We'll just take each chapter one by one. We'll do the basement on that level. I'm kidding. All right. With that, we'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff. But I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what. So that's your disclaimer.